Okay, so Erik Erikson, again, a very classical theorist that I'm sure you'll learn about in depth again later in life. But anyways, yes, Erikson is a stage theorist, and his stage goes all the way from birth up until the end of life. So here's what's important to remember about Erikson. All of his stages, he calls them a dilemma. So, and I used to use this language a lot in class, but then kids would get confused and think when they had to give examples of dilemmas that they had to make up the dilemma, like whether to, I don't know, whether to continue in this friendship that isn't going very well or not, which school to go to. No, these are the dilemmas. The dilemmas are here in red. You don't get to go run around making up dilemmas for Erikson. He's already done that, okay? So as you'll see, there's sort of a positive and a negative outcome for each dilemma. That's why it's one versus the other. And each of these descriptions sort of explain what it is that's happening at this age, and then what the outcome is that we want, and what kinds of behaviors and situations can lead to the positive outcome, for example, trust or autonomy, or a more negative outcome, mistrust or shame. Now, Erikson would argue that if you end up on mistrust, you're more likely to end up with shame, and then you end up with shame, you're more likely to end up on the right-hand side of all of these. So he sort of argues that stuff that happens in childhood has a very long-term impact on us, which, as a mother of a 2-year-old, is a little bit intimidating and frightening. But anyways, so infants from 0 to about 1.5 years old are trust versus mistrust. So the basic thing is, when I'm upset, does anyone come and help me? When I need help, is anyone there? When I'm hungry, does anyone feed me? When I need a cuddle, does anyone come and maybe hug me a little bit? And children need to know that their needs are going to be met. Now, my parents, my grandparents didn't necessarily subscribe to this school of thought as we do now. It was thought that you could spoil an infant by responding to their needs too quickly. These days, research shows that shows that's not true. Now, not everyone necessarily buys into the new research either, but the advice that most of us are given is if your little baby cries, you need to go and see what's going on, because they need something. And even if you can't figure out what it is, you have to keep trying. That's the job. So the idea here, according to Erikson anyways, is that children need to understand that they can trust people in the world to take care of them when care is needed. An inappropriate care or lack of care can lead to anxiety and lack of trust throughout life. Autonomy versus shame. So this is sort of toddler age. Kids are walking around trying to get the lay of the land, and they're starting to make choices. I'm in this stage right now where there's a lot of screaming about Minnie Mouse shirt and wanting to wear certain things, and no like these pants. I get told that kind of thing every once in a while. So it's a balance. This is where it becomes a balancing act. You've got to let your child, you're supposed to, according to Erikson anyways, let your child explore the world and feel positive about making choices. Let them have some control. But obviously keep them safe. Like if Isabel's choice is to go running into the street, that's not allowed to happen, right? Because that's very risky, and I know that, and she doesn't. So it's how you handle those situations. So you don't want her to feel like she's an idiot or bad for trying to run into the street, but you have to explain that it's not safe. So we've had some conversations about traffic lately and how that works. I'm not sure the message is getting received, but we'll keep working on it. So we want children to be secure and confident that they can do certain things without them thinking that sort of the world is their oyster and no one's ever going to keep them in check. Initiative versus guilt. So these are sort of like kindergarten age kids. Play is sort of the name of the game, and it evolves from playing beside other kids to playing with other kids. And you want children to take initiative and to try new things and feel good about that. You don't want them to feel like, when they're asking the same question 5,000 times, you don't want them to start feeling like they're annoying or a nuisance or that you're criticizing them for trying new things. Again, within certain guidelines. Industry versus inferiority. So this is sort of our elementary/middle school kids. This is where we start to see the shift from parents as being the most important people in a child's life to others outside the household, teachers, classmates, friends. And you want kids to start feeling like they have a sense of industry, that they can go into the world, decide something they want to do and want to try, make a plan, execute the plan, do well, and feel good about it. So trying to have as much positive reinforcement of that, without making them think that they are the best at everything. I mean, what could you possibly be the best at in the world at age 10? Um, so it's maintaining that balance, and also, and this is where I think these days as parents we're struggling, embracing failure, letting kids fall short, or even feel the consequences of not putting forth enough effort, and learn the lesson of how to recover, right? Because failures, guess what? If you haven't had a lot of failure in your life, it's coming. You're not going to get through a well-lived life without some. So it's not about the fact that you screw up and aren't as great at things as you want to be. It's about how do you cope with that feeling of crap that didn't go the way I wanted to. So starting to learn those lessons a little bit young is what Erickson is sort of recommending here. Identity versus role confusion. So here's adolescence and early adulthood, trying to figure out who on earth you are and trying to narrow that down. I always think of role confusion as being involved in a million different things and not having a sense of priority of what's really important. There was a great email in our sort of group here once years ago from one of the teachers on staff that was the subject line was clubs, and more clubs, just club me already. And they were sort of getting concerned about some of the kids in our building being involved in so many things that they weren't necessarily able to keep up with their schoolwork, and they weren't able to prioritize. You know, if you're the leader of 5 clubs, well, which one's the most important to you? And do you need to be the leader of all 5, or should you be the leader of one and in 2 others, right? So trying to kind of narrow things down a little bit more. Anyhow, because if you don't figure out what your priorities are, then how do you sort of move forward? So Erickson then argues that if you don't figure out who you are, it becomes difficult to have intimacy and have a couple type relationship with another humanoid. So knowing who you are is a step in that direction. Generativity versus stagnation. You can look this up. There are different areas of generativity, which is sort of interesting, I find, to read about. But people at this age start settling down, settling into things, and hopefully feeling some sort of sense of purpose about it all, without which we can feel stagnated or stuck. Integrity versus despair. This is more end-of-life stuff when you're spending time looking back, right? My parents said to me recently that their favorite part of life with us as kids was when we were sort of in that middle school age, when we were involved in, hockey and figure skating and this and that and the other, and they were running around. There's 3 of us. I don't know how they got us to everything on time. It's beyond me. But they did. We got everywhere we needed to be. And they just talked about, yes, they were busy, but it was a good kind of busy, and that they liked that we were involved in all those things, and then we met great people, and that even as adults, they met lots of great people through those organizations. So this is a good sign for my parents as they age, that they're looking back and feeling good about the choices that they made, because otherwise you end up feeling regretful. I wish I would have. Why didn't I? Which I'm sure there's some of that for everyone, but it's about, again, this balance of where you end up. Okay, so that's Erickson. Roger Gould, he's a stage theorist, but he really focuses on adolescence until midlife, and he's just got these 3 stages here that we're going to talk about. So adults, he says, are dismantling illusions of safety from childhood and trying to figure out how to navigate the world on their own, which can be rather frightening. So this is sort of your teenage to early adult years, starting to form your own opinions, and some of those may be different than what your parents believe. And children also start to realize that mom and dad aren't always going to be there to pick you up when you fall, that some of that work you have to do yourself, or find other people to hang around with that will help you with that. Kids have to start making their own decisions and to develop some self-confidence, and eventually you're going to leave your parents' world, which can be a little bit terrifying. Gould says that between ages 22 and 28, you're learning more to rely on yourself, and understanding that you're not always going to succeed on everything that you try, and that's okay. There's stuff you can learn from that, but you have to sort of get through those things. 28 to 34, understand that life can be sort of uncontrollable. You don't actually get to make all the decisions. Things will happen to you, and how do you create for yourself a world of people that will help you when those things go wrong? There are more stages here, but we're not going to focus on those right now. Okay. Levinson Has he seasons of life? Actually, we'll do Levinson in the next one.